Thank you, Mark, so much for coming and being here at Uptown Palante. We are thrilled to have you today in our episode as we think about our city reopening.
Gracias a ti, Mino. I'm really happy to be here. It's a great pleasure.
As we look at the reopening stages, we're on phase two now, and we look at phase three and phase four. What are some things we can do to not only stay safe, but as Uptown to not only survive, but thrive?
Well, first, I don't want people to think that because we're going to phase two, that the pandemic is over, that the virus risk is gone. It's still very much out there in our city. And so we need folks uptown to take care of themselves, to continue to wash their hands and avoid hugs and handshakes. And of course, wear a mask when you're out there. Think about the risk, especially if you are vulnerable because of your age or your medical condition. That doesn't mean that we can't begin to patronize local businesses, that we can't begin to meet up with folks in open air settings like parks, as long as we take those precautions. Being locked up has also had a terrible mental health toll. People call it quarantine fatigue, and that's real, especially going into a hot New York City summer. So while we slowly and carefully get back to some in-person social contact, let's not forget about the ongoing risk of the virus. And you mentioned the mental health challenges. I'm really worried about this, and I don't think it's gotten enough attention because understandably we've been focused on the medical crisis of the last couple of months, but I'm quite worried that levels of anxiety and depression, feelings of isolation and despair are all going up, and that needs to be addressed. Even now, it could take months and years to get over that. So people have to not be ashamed to reach out for help. This is no different than a physical ailment. Mental health is a real challenge that can be addressed, but people have to seek help and do it without shame or stigma.
It's so important, and especially in our communities, so often, as a Dominicana, like within our own Latino communities, we tend to think that it's something wrong asking for help about something about mental health, but that is not the case. And I think about our kids too. So many of the young people we work with at PTP have been stayed in home because the parents are amazing and are really trying to protect them, but they coming out, even for our young people and our children, is going to be a phase, and seeking out that support is so important.
Oh, yes. So for young people, this has been a traumatic experience that will impact them for years to come, much like 9/11 impacted people who were young at that time, and all of us.
Yeah.
But I think young people are particularly vulnerable. So what People's Theater Project is doing now to give young people an outlet for expression, for connecting with peers, a chance to be inspired by arts, to be challenged by arts, is even more important than ever before.
Thank you. Yeah, so many groups of town and all over the city. The arts really, I think, have come together in a way that is very special, and I think speaks to what we as artists believe, right? The power of healing that can come through that. One of the things, as you mentioned, it is not only a public health crisis, but an economic crisis. Do you fear there's going to be an onset of mass evictions after this? Because we know that a lot of our families have not been able to pay rent because the same reason the food pantry lines are so long. There is food security, there is rent security, insecurity, I mean. So what can we do about that? How can we support our tenants and our buildings in order to come out of that?
I am extremely worried about this. We have not only reopened cafes and barbershops this week, but also housing courts are starting to operate again in New York City. And that confronts us with the possibility of a wave of evictions like none we have ever seen in this city, because so many people have simply lost their income and therefore have no ability to pay rent and have accrued a lot of back rent, which I believe that needs to be canceled for folks who are low income and have again lost their livelihood because of this pandemic. But absent that, we are risking a terrible wave of evictions that could lead to homelessness and only compound the suffering in Black and brown communities like Uptown Manhattan. And actually, my colleague in the city council, Vanessa Gibson, and I put out an op-ed today in Gotham Gazette pointing out this risk and pointing out a possible solution, which is expanding right to counsel for tenants to every single zip code of the city. You know, we passed this law in 2017. It's been phased in zip code by zip code, but we want to go citywide now with the right to counsel to help prevent this wave of evictions. And there's some reasons why it would probably mean the pace of housing court cases would have to slow down. And that would also allow for some social distancing in housing court, which is generally extremely overcrowded. And so there's also a public health interest here, as well as a compelling need to secure justice for tenants who could be heading into an absolute hurricane of evictions in the weeks and months ahead.
I want to switch a little bit and think about, you know, Juneteenth just happened. This past weekend, we did an amazing children's march in Washington Heights, Children for Black Lives. So we've been having all these gatherings because, as you mentioned earlier, there is this other strong movement happening, much needed movement to make change, which we have seen the people rise and we have seen government make change, right? So how can we support city council member and all of the city council member leaders who are saying we're going to defund by $1 billion the police? How can we help you to make that happen?
This is going to be an incredibly contentious budget negotiation between the city council and mayor and the administration. It's going to be playing out between now and probably the last couple of days of June. And we need everybody speaking out now in favor of fixing the imbalance in the budget. The budget the mayor proposed, what they call the executive budget that the mayor proposed back in April, had a 32% cut to the Department of Youth and Community Development and a less than 1/3 of 1% cut to the police department. That is absolutely indefensible. That cannot be allowed to stand. Has to be fixed in the final budget that we pass. And we need regular people speaking up. Reach out to your council member, reach out to the administration, to the mayor, through social media, through emails, to deliver a very strong message that you want this fixed and that you want a budget which reflects value placed on young people, on social programs, on health programs, on the arts. And to do that, yeah, we're going to have to cut the NYPD budget. There's just no other choice. Now's the time to do it.
We will be tweeting, we will be sending calls, making phone calls to council members and the executive team as well to make sure that our voices are heard in that. And finally, to end up, una pregunta que we always ask at the end, in the midst of all of this, right? And we are home with our families and juggling all of this work, but we keep going. El show se llama Uptown Pa'lante. What keeps you going? What gives you hope at the end of the day, every day?
Bueno, me alegro mucho poder acabar con un tema un poco más de esperanza.
Sí.
De verdad siento ánimo ahora viendo el impulso que ha dado las protestas. I feel uplifted by the momentum that the momentum for change right now. This is not the first crisis New York City has confronted. It's not the first crisis that Uptown has confronted. We have dealt with and overcome economic depression before. We have dealt with pandemics before. And we've dealt with blackouts. We've dealt with anti-police uprisings before, right here in Washington Heights.
Yep.
And we have come back. We've come back after every one of these challenges. And I'm really optimistic that we're going to see change. We're going to see real investment in health equity, real investment in the kinds of social programs which ultimately do a much better job at keeping our city safer than policing does.
Yes.
And real accountability in the police department in a way that we've just never been able to achieve before. I think Uptown is going to lead the way on this because we're a community which I think has social justice in our DNA, has economic justice in our DNA. That's been true over every wave of immigrants that's come through here from Irish to Jewish to Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominicano, Afroamericano, again and again and again. We've come here with a strong sense of social justice, with a mission to make change, and we're going to lead now as we build the new New York, the new Uptown. It's going to be fairer, it's going to be healthier, it's going to be smarter and stronger, and I can't wait to work with you, Mino, with the arts community and all the activists Uptown to make that vision come true.
Casi lloro. I agree. Thank you so much, Mark. Councilmember Mark Levine, leader, neighbor, vecino y amigo, an advocate for Uptown in so many ways. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you, Mino. Shout out to Led Black, mi hermano, and all the Uptown leaders who are putting together this important conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
Gracias.
Cuídense.